raise your hand if it's highly relevant to the topic. Thanks, Ken. There'll also be time at the end for questions. And usually we go around the room and do introductions, but because we're expecting a large number of people in this meeting, we're going to skip formal introductions, but you're welcome to put your name and organization in the chat. And with that, Ken, take it away. Skills.
Hey
Ken's got
everybody.
skills.
Yeah, you either have skills or you're gonna get skills soon. Skills, if you're in that cocktail party and everybody's talking about AI, you just want to drop that. You just want to be like, yeah, really it's all about skills these days. Just throw that out there. You'll win. Forget about what everybody else is talking about. Just say skills. So I got a quick presentation. Most of this is demo because I think sort of you seeing me use skills and create skills is going to be kind of more useful than me just talking about skills. So, with that in mind, let us start with the presentation. Um, all right, and you already got this from Erica, so boom, one slide out of the way. Um, all right, so now we're going to immediately transition to a demo. So let's say here I'm in Claude, right? And everybody can see my screen, I assume. Like this is working here. Um, so I've got a thing here. I've got a prompt. I want to write to a donor, a letter to a donor. Thank them for it, blah blah blah. And okay, I'm going to say something. Normally, when I teach the class, I say, don't let AI write for you, right? Write the rough draft. I'm demonstrating it's better to use the skill that I'm going to show you here to critique something that I have written myself. But here, just for making it sort of more obvious, I'm asking it to actually write a letter. All right. So when I do this, you'll see this sleuthing. Um, you see the status up here. Um, and it says loaded organizational skills. Everybody see that kind of right below the viewing file, right? And it's like, dear donor name, since January, we put rel effort, here it is. Like this is a letter. If I click on um, here, loaded organizational skill, if I click on that, over on the right, you see the actual skill. And this skill is this AI for community brand. Right? This is a skill I've previously created that talks about, whenever I'm writing something, creating a presentation, etc., what colors to use, what font to use, what tone of voice to use, etc. Right? So this is a skill that anywhere in Claude that I'm doing things, whether it's like, for example, working inside of a Claude project, or I'm using it with like the Claude desktop app, etc., it can trigger when it decides that the thing I'm asking it to do would benefit from the information in this skill. And that's all really based on, if you see here, this description part here, right? This is the thing that describes the skill. Applies AI for communities brand identity, teal and blue palette, robo condensed and Gibson typeface, logo usage and human voice to any artifact. Use this whenever creating or revising slide decks, Word documents, PDFs, certificates, web pages, blah, 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 right? Like it's basically providing instructions to Claude about when this skill should automatically get used. All right, so this skill actually came out of me using Claude design system to define the AI for community brand. And I kind of talk about this in one of the previous meetups where I talked about painless presentations. In painless presentations, one of the first things I did is I showed, hey, I created this branding document for AI for community. Now, normally you would not have me, caveman programmer, creating a branding document, right? You'd have somebody who actually knows what they're doing. But I was able to leverage something that Carol White at Winter Street Design had done, which was here's a color palette and here are font choices and font sizes. So I had something to start with, and I had some previous content I had created that I fed it and then it sort of derived this document from it, right? So I have this branding document, and I used it when creating the skill that you just saw.
Can
There are,
I pause you there for one
yeah.
second? It sounds like there are people in the waiting room that need to be admitted, and I do not have that power.
I am admitting everyone as they're coming in.
Oh,
So, um,
so,
yeah, let's see here. I
yeah.
don't have
Thanks.
anybody that's
Okay,
waiting that I
great.
can see.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Olivia. I just want to make sure you saw
Mhm.
it.
All right. So uh, here's this donor letter, and it's not a bad letter, right? Again, I wouldn't suggest you do this, as like you write the rough draft yourself, but it can be incredibly effective when I'm creating like, I don't know, a little web page, or I've written a document and I'm asking Claude to critique it. Because when Claude is critiquing something I've written, it's also going to apply this branding to it. Now, um, a different skill that I have is I've created a skill that takes a transcript and it organizes it. And that transcript, I've talked about this in previous training classes, is an audio transcript of me talking at my phone as I walk my dog. So this was the transcript I created for that super deep research meetup where almost all my transcripts start off with, all right, testing, testing, like making sure the microphone on my phone is working. And I just talk to it and I get this chunk of text here, right? It's free form stream of conscious thoughts. And in this case right here, when I have that, I want it to get organized so that it's more useful then to, for example, actually create the meetup content. So I'm going to process this transcript. And when I say process the transcript, you see again, loaded organizational skill here, right? You can see this like thing that's happening. And if I click on that over here, you see organizes a rough stream of conscious audio transcript, right? This is the skill being used. And because that skill is part of my setup, anytime I say process a transcript or here's a transcript or organize these thoughts, it's going to get triggered and it's going to organize it. And as it organizes it, like, grouped it, etc., it's got confidence. If I click on this, like I get this really useful outline over here on the right from those rough notes, right? All this stuff right here. And then it also has a section at the end for anything that's like, this doesn't matter what the heck was going on here. So, like, oh, all right, I wonder what I missed from there. Like, that was me talking to a neighbor, I think, as I walked by. Right. So, again, it's an incredibly useful skill that just gets triggered automatically. And this same skill I can make available to anybody in the organization so that anybody in the organization can use this same technique to organize their rough thoughts. And the final demo over here is I'm going to use Claude Desktop. So I'm using the app now. Is there somebody at this meeting, at this meetup, who I have not had a conversation with and who works at a nonprofit? I mean, these should all be like carefully curated like examples, but I'm willing to just go crazy and do a live demo. Is there anybody here that I haven't had a call with that works for a nonprofit that I could use as a demo here? Um, like, I don't know, Stephanie. I don't think have I don't think I've done a call with you, right? If you want to unmute and let me know.
No, hi Ken. This is my first time on this group, so nice.
And
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you all.
nice to meet you. And do you work for a nonprofit?
I don't.
Oh, okay. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I want somebody who's actually got, let's see, a nonprofit they're involved with. Juanita, is that? I don't think I've had a.
Ken, this is Valerie.
Hey, Valerie.
No, we've never had a call.
Okay, Juanita, I'm going to use this. Agenda for call with Juanita Scott. Okay. Oh, okay, I think everybody needs to mute. We're getting a little feedback here. All right. Oh, somebody's still unmuted.
It's me.
Okay. All right. So here I'm I just put in this agenda for call with Juanita Scott. And it says working on it. And what it's going to do, you'll see here, um, do, 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 do. That's the danger of a live demo is going to take a while, right? It's like, what's the main purpose? Like, I don't know, intro relationship building. And I want it to be, I don't know, 15 minutes. Oh, wait a minute. What am I saying here? Okay. If I go to customize here and I look at skills, I actually don't have that skill loaded. So it was asking me all these random questions where I'm like, wait, why isn't it like it should know how I do my agenda? The reason why is I don't have that skill. So I jumped ahead a little bit. Let's go back here to, so we got branding and transcription processing, right? I gave you demos of those two things. Now we're going to talk about what actually is a skill. So you can think skills are like basically reuse, it's a standard operating procedure, right? It's reusable instructions. What actually makes up a skill is a set of files. There always has to be a file called skill.md. So .md means it's markdown. It's a format I've talked about in the past where it's like a text format, but you can use like hashtag for a title, two hashtags for a subtitle, you know, et cetera. It supports lists, tables, all those functions. So there has to be a skill.md file that has a particular format, which means if you were editing that by yourself, it would be hard, but Claude gives you support for doing that editing. And you know, one of the things I'm going to do is I think I might spotlight me. Um, all right, and then you can have additional data that's part of your skill. So let's start with assets. There can be a folder inside of like your skill folder that's assets. And that's anything that Claude is just going to use without looking at. Like it can be a logo. Typically, these are things like images. So when you say, hey, anytime I create a website, I want our company logo in the top left corner, great. You'd put that logo image file, a PNG file or something, into this assets folder. References contain files that Claude will use that are more like templates, right? Where it actually has to look at it. So as an example, I could have a Word document in references, which is here's our standard document for anything we send out that's a Word document. So it can have like the logo in the upper left, it can have our address, it's got some nice footer, and it's got some placeholders in the middle like dear name and some text. So I could have that in there so that anytime I'm creating a Word document, it's going to grab that as a template and then apply stuff to it. And lastly, there's scripts. And scripts are actually code, like Python code, JavaScript code, Bash scripts. This is where if you have a very advanced script that actually has to like do processing, you can have code in there. And what I'm going to say is, and I'll talk about this in a bit, but if you are using a third-party skill that you've loaded and it has code in the scripts folder, that's very dangerous because I could put anything in there, right? I could put a script in there that goes and looks at the hard disk to find files called password and send it to me, right? So that can create some security issues. It's fine if it's a skill you're getting from Anthropic, from somebody you trust. Otherwise, that's a red flag. It gets run either when you call it by name, and we'll talk about what that means, or when what you're typing in matches the description. So for example, if I want to explicitly say I want to use a skill, I could have slash discovery call. And that would say, oh, there's a skill called discovery call. I want to explicitly use it. Or it can be like, you know, hey, I want to do a discovery call with this person. And Claude or ChatGPT will automatically figure out from the description, I want to use this skill. Now, it's different than like custom instructions, you know, the things where you've customized your instance of Claude with a custom instruction or your memories or like the project rules. Those things are static and they're always on. when you're in the project or where you get your instructions, when you like start any chat, your custom instructions are like implicitly typed in. You don't see it, but it's there. But skills are triggered, right? The only thing that's always loaded is the skill description, so that like Claude or ChatGPT knows when to run the skill, right? So those things are always loaded as if you typed in at the beginning of every chat the description for every skill you've got loaded, right? But everything else, the references, the assets, the rest of the skill, it's only loaded when you need it, which is important, right? Because the more stuff that gets loaded into your context, the slower your chats are, the more token usage goes up, etc. So skills are a very effective way of only loading what you need when you need it. And there's two other big things about skills. Skills go across conversations, projects, etc. If I've got a skill installed, I can use it anywhere. In any project, any conversation, I can use that skill. Versus like a project, I have to be in the project to use the instructions that I've set up for that project and the context. And I can share it across the organization. If I have a useful skill like branding, I can make it accessible to anybody in my organization, right? Which is incredibly powerful. So where do these skills come from? Okay, there are a couple built-in skills. Like anytime you're using Claude, you've got the PowerPoint skill, the PPTX skill. It's automatically there. You also have the skill creator skill. It's always there. There's a small number of preloaded skills. Beyond that, there's this github.com/anthropic/skills, which is a directory of skills from Anthropic. And I think there's like 30 or 40 skills in there. Beyond that, there are third-party skills or skill repositories. So there are places you can go, and I'll reference them, where you'll see a list of skills. Here, you're starting to get into like the danger zone. Like, do you really trust that website with that skill? Because skills can create security issues, but they're there. And then there's just the general community. Like you go on in Google and you're like, is there a skill for nonprofits that deals with updating your 990? And there probably is a skill. Do you trust it? This is where somebody who knows about skills, if you have that person in your organization, should take a look at it. But skills is an open standard. There's a specification, agentskills.io/specification, which talks about here's exactly how you create a skill. So there are lots of them out there, and skills are transportable. It means I could use them in ChatGPT. I could use them in Claude. I could actually use them with the Gemini command line thing. Gemini itself doesn't directly support them yet, but it will. So it's great that it's an open standard, right? I'm going to remake that point I said. Each skill has a description section at the beginning. And every skill that you've installed or that your administrator has installed, that description gets loaded into every single one of your chats. You don't see it getting loaded, but it's loaded. So that takes some time, and it means every chat you have has additional text that you're paying for. So 10 skills, 20 skills, 50 skills, probably fine. You get to like 100 skills or more, and you're starting to impact your chats. Your chats are taking longer and they're costing more. So it's one of the things, like only install the skills that you are actually using. So that means if there's a skill that looks interesting, try it out. And if it doesn't work, you got to get rid of it. Right? You don't want to build up like a huge collection of skills that you aren't actually using. So then there's a question of skill versus project. Like they kind of are similar, like they each have instructions, they've got files associated with them. When do you use a skill and when do you use a project? So use a skill when it's a specific repeatable task. This is how we want people in our organization to file expense reports, right? This is when you create a web page, here's the colors we want to use, and here's the fonts we want to use. So it's this repeatable specific thing. And it's got very clear instructions. It's like if you could write something down on a sheet of paper or type it into an email and give it to a coworker and feel like there's a reasonable chance they'd be able to follow those instructions, great. That's a possibility for a skill. Um, do you need to have a paid subscription to use skills in Claude? I don't believe so, but I've never tried out the free version with skills. Each skill should be specific, right? It's like a one workflow. It's the invoice submission skill. It's not the accounting skill for my nonprofit that tries to cover everything we do that involves finance. A skill needs to define, if a skill can define, here's what we need to use, like here's an image file, here's a template Word document. If you can be very explicit about it, that's a good sign that this can be a skill. You can include examples to guide the output. That's a really cool thing about a skill. In the description of the skill, I can say, here's a good example of a LinkedIn post, right? This is what I want it to look like, and that helps guide the skill to generate good results. When to use a project? It's ongoing. So let's say, for example, I'm planning an event. If I'm planning an event, I might want to create a project in Claude because I'm going to have multiple conversations about that thing that are kind of ongoing. Let me pick a date. Let me decide on the format of it. Like these are ongoing conversations around a topic. And I've got like, I don't know, here's our strategic plan that is part of every single chat that I have about this thing. There's a document that's important for every chat. And conversation history is accumulating and it's important. So if, for example, I'm planning an event, every chat that I have about that, that is useful context for a subsequent chat. Skills, every time you run the skill, it starts completely fresh. It doesn't have that history of chats, which for a specific project can be very useful. Also in Claude, remember memories are project specific. And so as memories accumulate from previous chats, that provides additional very useful context. And sometimes you can share projects across organizations. And so again, shared context, it's where the context is more important, like the documents that you want to consider when you're talking with Claude. If that's the focus, not procedures, but that content, then it seems more like a project. So if you've got a project and in your project instructions, you got step by step, like do this, then do this, then do this, and that's part of your project's instructions, that's a really good signal that it probably wants to be a skill because it smells like a workflow, right? If you have numbered steps, that's a workflow. So let's say we wanted to build a discovery call skill. So what I'm looking for here is a skill that whenever I'm setting up for a call with somebody and I haven't had a conversation with them before, I want it to help me create an agenda that I can use for that call. Make sense? All right, so oh, Erica, you had a question?
There are a couple of questions in the chat that I wanted to direct your attention to.
Um, all right. Can skills be called between design versus regular Claude? Can a design system in Claude Design be used to create a skill in Claude? So yes, though when I tried that, I had that Claude Design and I said make a skill. The results weren't great. What worked better for me was in the design, Claude Design. I said export all these documents that describe the design. So created a set of documents and then I used those documents with Claude to build a skill. Claude Design is kind of weird. It's a very focused sort of sidecar to regular Claude. And so the integrations aren't perfect. So export from Claude Design, you'll get like a brand file of, et cetera. and then use those to define the skill. And then there's an update logic for when does a skill need to be updated. For things where I'm pretty sure a skill is going to regularly want to have updated content, what I do is I say, I don't put the content in the skill. I put something in the skill that says, read from this Google Doc, right? And so I put the dynamic content into a Google Doc and I tell the skill where to find it. Make sense? There, Claude does provide a pretty straightforward way to update a skill. But for really dynamic content, just put it in a Google Doc and reference it from the skill. So in here, I had a project, CoFlow Discovery Calls, and I had instructions here for how to create like an agenda. So what I did is I worked with Claude to come up with what's a great description of what I'm doing here that's appropriate for a skill. And I iterated with Claude on creating this great description of a skill, which includes things here like being very explicit, like save the output as a markdown file, name the file agenda-name-org-date, where date is the date of the call, and da-da-da is the format of it, right? It's like I've got an intern, right? And I'm telling the intern, here's exactly how I want you to create like the output file. So this right here is the sort of the description of what I want. So now I can go over here and let's click on customize. You see customize over here on the left side of my window. So if I click on customize, it shows a list of skills that I've got, right? These are all the skills. I have personal ones that I've created versus all. And all over here, you'll see these are ones that are my admin, which means that's also me, but it means that the person who administers my Claude team account added these skills for everybody to use. I also have skills that I've personally added that are from Anthropic, right? So I've got a morning skill and a skills creator. And then I have all the ones that I've created myself personally that are not visible to other people in the organization, right? Only I can use these because these are all mine. So then if I want to add a skill, I can click on the add and I have a couple options. I can upload a skill, which is what I would do if I downloaded a skill from Anthropic, from like that GitHub repo, or I had some third-party skill that I wanted to use. I typically would upload a skill. Writing skill instructions, this is hard. This is where you have to know exactly what needs to go in each section. Or there's the easy approach that I typically use, which is create with Claude. All right, so I click on create with Claude, and what it does is it starts a conversation where it just fills in a prompt for me. It's like, let's create a skill together using your skill creator skill. So I'm gonna give it that prompt. And Claude's gonna be like, oh, okay, I need to use the skill creator. So you can see here, loading skill creator skill. Right, so it's loading the skill that knows how to create skills. What should this skill do? So I'm like, boop, all of this. So it's going to chew on this for a while, right? This is a pretty lengthy document. And it says, this looks like an existing skill. So it's seeing if I already have a discovery call agenda skill. Like, don't create the same skill twice. It doesn't. So now it's actually looking at previous conversations I've had. And yes, I tested this out. It's like, hey, so I'm going to say create from scratch. Claude keeps getting smarter. So it's like, oh, you already did this yesterday when I was testing this out. Do you want me to just use what we did yesterday? I'm like, no, let's start from scratch. Let's do this from the beginning. So this is what's happening now. You can see it's draft skill.md from the discovery call agenda skill, create skill working directory, et cetera. It's going through all these steps. So it's building this skill. And this, for really complicated skill, can take like 15 or 20 minutes. Like this is not something where you want to sit here and watch it typically. You want to walk away. Um, like it looks at here, da 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 da. Do you want to make any changes? Do you want to test run it? I'm going to say package it up. Like it's interesting, the skill creator will do things like, hey, let's try it in a couple different examples and you'll see what the outputs are. So it's a really useful approach. All right. So I've got this discovery call agenda skill over on the right here, and you can see here's the description, right? And this is the thing right here that is going to tell Claude when to automatically run the skill. I can also say slash discovery call agenda in my chat, and I'll tell it explicitly to use this one. It talks about all these steps right here, right? Checking LinkedIn, Gmail, calendar, head to the backgrounder, clarify questions, build the agenda, right? Each section, blah, 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 save the output. Like this is a standard operating procedure. Does that make sense? And it gives me this handy save skill button up here, right? So if I click on save skill, it's like, okay, great. I've done it. And it gives me the ability to update it if I want to update it in the future. So now if I go over here and I click on customize, you can see I've now got this discovery call agenda skill here, but it's only for me, right? I could download that skill file and give it to my administrator and say, let's make this available to everybody. And the administrator could add it then as a skill that's shared across the organization. But until I do that, it's just me. So now if I go back to Claude desktop, and now I'm going to create a new chat. And now if I run this, I'm hoping it's going to pick up that new skill. Let's see if it actually comes up with it. Do you see that right there? Discovery call agenda, right? So now that skill is being used with the name here, Juanita Scott, as the context. And it says finding tools, adding tasks, etc., researching on web and LinkedIn, right? Build and save agenda, etc., right? It's starting all these tasks and doing them in parallel. And one of the things it's doing is it's using the Claude Chrome extension. Like if I go and open up my browser right now, I'll see that it has created a new tab for LinkedIn, and it's searching on her name, and it's trying to pull up her profile. And if it finds the profile, it's going to copy all that information and is going to use that as part of the context for planning this. It's also looking at all my emails to see, have we had previous email conversations? Actually, not all. It looks 1 month in the past. And it's also looking in my calendar for anything involving her, right? So it's automatically pulling in all that context. So you can see using Claude Chrome, right? So this is where it's going out to the browser and pretending to be me so that it has the ability to do searches on the LinkedIn website. It's fetching the page. What is this? Maverickvillage.org. Is that the right organization? Juanita? Oh, I don't know. Is this kind of weird? Hey, Juanita, if you want to unmute, let me know. Is this weird seeing like it research you? Or is Juanita frozen? Oh no. Looks like maybe your Zoom call froze. Um, anyway, as you can tell, this is
Oh, I'm
not fast.
sorry, I'm here.
Okay. So I was asking if like what was it? Markville something? There was some
Maverick
nonprofit.
Village.
Yes.
Hmm.
Is that the right organization?
Yes.
Okay. So this is not fast. Usually when I set this up, often skills take time, right? It's a standard operating procedure. You're asking something to work over a whole bunch of steps. And like when I teach the AI in depth class, one thing I say is when you give AI something complicated to do, don't sit there watching it. That would be like if you gave a coworker a task and then you stood in front of their desk and sat there looking at them doing it. Erica, yes.
I have an idea. While we're waiting for Claude to do its work, maybe you could answer some of the questions in the chat.
Ah, um, all right. So it's asking me a bunch of questions. Actually, we're almost there. So it asked me like, what's the date of this call that's coming up? I don't know yet. What's the main purpose? I want to find out. How long is it? 15 minutes, right? It's asking me questions, which is really cool. Um, and it's going to come up with this agenda soon. All right. Maybe you are planning to. It would be great to hear additional examples of skills for business, nonprofit, personal. I mean, oh my God, there are so many skills out there. The ones I typically use for my day-to-day are help me plan out my day. It's a modified version of the morning skill that's available from Anthropic. Um,
Hmm.
Planning a presentation, setting up a discovery call, critiquing stuff I've written. So the branding, tone of voice thing, those are those are the skills I use on a pretty regular basis. All right. So here's this discovery call agenda. Um, Licensed practical nurse, healthcare leader, and compliance specialist, right? Key things to know. She registered for AI community online training twice and completed AI in depth. Um, so here's an agenda, warm open, you know. um, how has the training landed? What brought her to the call? Follow-on questions. Um, and here it gives me examples of things that they are probably doing where AI could be beneficial. So Anita, does this kind of feel like a maybe an interesting agenda for you?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And so I wanted to show the example is that like it was looking back at information like, oh, she's been to classes, oh, here's her LinkedIn profile. Here's the information about her organization on the website. It did all of that for me while I was hopefully doing something else useful. Make sense? So let's see. Now let's go back to here. So skill evolution. How do I go about creating a skill? Typically, the approach I use, there's two different approaches. One is I start with a project. I'm like, yeah, hey, I want to do this thing and I've got some useful information and instructions. I'll create a project in Claude. And then it'll evolve as I use it, where I'm like modifying the instructions, I'm adding or changing the context, the files that are associated with that project. And then at some point, I'm like, okay, this has been pretty stable and it's useful. So it's going to be worth sort of the effort to turn it into a skill. Or, I want to share it with other people in my organization in a more flexible way than just sharing the project. So great, I'm going to create a skill for it. So then I'm going to work with Claude to go through the thing we just saw of creating a skill. And don't let the perfect skill get in the way of a useful skill. Like it's easy, it's even easier than with prompting to overthink it. And the best way to create a really good skill is to start with a not so good skill and use it, and then figure out what needs to be changed. Um, and there's this stacking approach, which is really powerful. Like, I can create a branding skill, let's say. Um, and then I can create a skill for creating a LinkedIn post. And that skill for creating a LinkedIn post can reference the branding skill. It can say, when you're creating this post, make sure you use slash AI for C dash branding to ensure the appropriate tone, etc. Right? And so you can layer these things. Or I have a presentation skill. It uses the built-in Anthropic PPTX PowerPoint skill. Make sense? Right, so this is one approach. There's two other approaches. One of them is you find an existing skill, like one that Anthropic has published, or maybe some third party has published. And when you're using Claude to create your skill, you say, hey, I want to do something like this, but I want these changes, right? So that can give you a really good starting point for a skill. Or even more sort of seamless, like there's a morning skill that Anthropic provides. I used the morning skill and it didn't pick up in planning that tomorrow I have a meetup, right? And I'm like, hey, why didn't you see that? Why didn't you include that in something I needed to do today? And it said, well, that was because it was a calendar event that you responded to via an invite. Like that was labeled in the calendar thing as you were invited to something. So I didn't think that was your thing. I'm like, well, how would I have changed your skill so that it would have picked that up? And it told me you would edit the instructions to add this when it's looking at calendar stuff to not ignore that. And then I gave it a few other corrections and I had it build a new skill for me. Like I just said, okay, create a new skill with your suggested changes. So now I have my own morning skill, right? Which is basically a customized version of the basic Anthropic skill, right? So I didn't even have to point it at an existing skill somewhere. I just said, you have a skill loaded. I want to change it this way. Make sense? All right. Skills for your organization. So what you saw was me creating a skill for me, right? And I had that ability if I was over in Claude, and you'll see me doing this, to like delete a skill, add a skill, etc. I can only do that because the administrator for my organization, which is me, said it's okay to let people install their own skills. So depending on how locked down you want your organization to be and how much you're worried about safety, you can configure Claude team and the ChatGPT team to not allow people to install their own skills. So in that case, it's got to become like an organizational thing, right? Skills are published by the organization. So, and you'll see a demo here. You can actually set who can install and who can create skills inside your organization. So let's take a quick look at that. So this is my skills, right? So this is me as a person, all the skills here, and I can say, you know what? I don't know. This skill right here, this YMCA HR advisor skill that I added as part of a demo, yeah, I need to remove it, right? So I click the little three dots over there. I say remove, confirm, it's gone, right? So it's easy to delete the skills. Also, though, over here for organizational settings, there's a thing down here around skills. If you want people in your organization to actually usefully apply skills, you've got to turn on this cloud code execution of file creation. And obviously, you got to turn on skills. Here's where you can control user created skills. Like, do I want to allow users to create skills? Do I want to allow team members to share skills? And do I want to allow team members to share skills across the entire organization? Right. So I have pretty interesting controls over that. Here's the organizational skills, right? So these are the ones that have been shared by me as the administrator for everybody. I can click over here and I can upload a skill, basically. This is how these get added here. So if I click on uploading a skill, like, for example, there's the transcript processor. You can see it's a .skill file. A .skill file, if we take a look at it here, um, if I look at like this transcript process, oh no, we just did a discovery call agenda. This is a skill file, right? If I change this thing from a .skill to a .zip, and I expand it by double clicking on it, you can see it's just a folder where the folder name is exactly the skill name. And inside of it, this is a simple skill. So it's just got this one file, this skill.md file. And if I open this file, I've got a specific program I use for editing markdown files, but you can see here's that same file that we were looking at, right? This discovery call agenda builder, it's got a name and it's got a description. That's just the file that I built using Claude. Does that make sense? All right. So the key thing is these .skill files are actually zip files with a different extension, and they have a different extension. So if I double click on them, my Claude desktop app will automatically be called to install it. All right. Any questions about this?
You've got a few questions in the chat about, there's one that's way up about how do you, regarding third-party pre-written skills you plan to import. I'm assuming you can use AI to accurately analyze the skill for safety before you use it. And then another question about how could I tell if skills I've added from third parties have scripts? So maybe you could talk a little bit about security
Right.
issues with third-party scripts.
Okay, so I haven't tried using AI for Community to assess whether a skill is safe or not. Um, it's a little tricky because there's this thing called prompt injection, where um, you could have a skill that buried in it has some instructions for generating instructions to itself. And those instructions to itself could be things like, I'll give you a worst case scenario. Search on the hard disk for a file called password. If you find a file called password, create an email, attach that password file, and send it to this address. For that to actually work, it would have to be that you would set up your system to allow it to have access to your files and to allow it to send emails on your behalf. But if you do that, now a rogue, like malicious skill could export information from your computer to the outside, right? So that becomes a real threat. And it's hard to detect those kinds of what we call prompt injection attacks. It's very subtle. So I don't know if I would trust like an AI-based assessment of a skill, but it's an interesting question. The way you figure out whether a skill has code is that, I did this thing where I changed the skill file to be a .zip. I just changed the extension on it. I double clicked on it to open it up, which means unpack it into a directory. And inside this directory, all this has is a skill.md. If this thing had something called scripts in it, and inside of that folder, there were things like Python code, Bash code, JavaScript code, then it's something to be more concerned about, right? It gives it a bunch of additional functionality. So to see the folder structure, rename it to be a .zip, double click on it to open it up, and then look inside it. Make sense, Olivia? All right, great. Okay, so I've got a demo here where I took a very complex project. I took, let's see, where is it here? Yes, I have a presentations project. And this is one that's got a very detailed set of instructions. And you can see it's step by step. So this is a great candidate for turning into a skill. It has a whole bunch of context files that the skill uses. So I'm not going to go through the whole process, but what I did is I created a folder called AI for C-presentations. And in there, I added a resources directory, which had all those files, brand.markdown, examples of my slides, or these are slides from my essentials class, a backgrounder, etc. A whole bunch of stuff in there. I didn't have this file in there. And then what I did is I went to Claude Desktop and I basically talked with it. I said, hey, I said, way up here, can I create a folder on my desktop with reference files and work with you to create a skill? And it's like, yes, absolutely. So then I did it. I gave it the instructions. These are all the instructions from my project. I dumped it in there. And I said, you know, I attached the folder to this, which had all those reference files in it, and then it ran for like 15 minutes. It created test cases, like here's examples of things that were built as both HTML files, PowerPoint files, and Markdown files. I looked at those, but I said, sure, create the skill. And it created this skill right here, this AI for C presentation skill. My actual like time spent on that was pretty minimal. I mean, it took it 15, 20 minutes, but I was busy doing other things. And it's a reasonable skill. I would have done more review. I would have actually reviewed the results, tweaked the description, etc. But for the demo, it was fine. So last thing, challenges you're going to run into. So the first one is security and vetting. Like we've been talking about, these skills have the ability to do bad things. And so, anything from Anthropic, I'm like, great, it's fine. Anything from an organization I trust, if it doesn't have a script in it, I'm going to say fine. Everything else, man, you haven't yet run into a skill where I really want to use it and I need to review it thoroughly. I'm going to try AI on it next time. Thank you for that idea. That's really interesting. There's another issue where sometimes like skills can fire when you don't want them to fire. If your description is too general, then you might be having AI run the skill when it shouldn't. So when that happens, you can edit down the description to make it more specific, or you can actually have a skill where it doesn't have a description that provides any context for auto triggering. And in that case, then you're going to have to specifically in your chat say use slash whatever the skill name is to tell Claude to use the skill. The last thing is stale data, right? The skill has files in it, and those files can go out of date. You can update skills, like so Claude gives you an ability to say, I want to update this skill. But the other approach is you put this dynamic content into, let's say, a Google Drive, Google Doc, and then you reference that from your skill. And the last thing that I find, the biggest challenge, good skills are an investment, right? They take time to test, to hone, to turn into something that is actually a significant win. So not everything that you're doing deserves to be a skill. Just like not everything you do in your job should be done with AI. Not everything you're doing with AI should be a skill. So you want to be intentional about like, do I feel good enough about this thing that I'm doing over and over again, or this thing that I want everybody else to do the same way, to justify the investment in time and effort it's going to take to make it a skill. All right.
You've got one more question in the chat.
Putting together a board package would be a skill, not a project, but could let others add input. Okay, that's an interesting question. How would I use a board skill where I'd want people to provide input to it? I've never tried this, but you could have a skill where one of the steps in there is draft an email to these people with what I've got so far as the content of that email and ask them for feedback. And then wait for you to provide their feedback before continuing. Does that make sense? All right, so you could actually have a step in there. All right. That was Jeanette. Yes. Does that answer your question, Jeanette? Like basically you could have a step in there where you send out an email, or you could have a step in there where it creates a Google Doc, right? And then you could just send out a link to that Google Doc as part of the email and say, please comment on this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions?
Hey, this is Anjali. Kind of a question, kind of a comment. I put a question earlier in the chat, and I think you just kind of misunderstood what my question was
Okay.
about. I've developed several skills, and I found that as I'm working and I'm iterating, there's often a need to then update the skill. And sometimes it's pretty egregious, like I'm correcting it. Sometimes it's more subtle and it's just like extra context that can sharpen the skill. And then sometimes I forget to like what needs updating. So my question was more around like I don't know, cleanliness, like a skill to keep the skill updated.
Hmm.
During the call, I ended up just using the skill creator and I'm creating a skill auditor, which is actually really cool. I'm almost done with it. So
Okay.
I'm going to have it execute to just like, is there anything in this chat that needs to, update the skill? So I think it's pretty cool.
Okay, so you're using it to basically say, in my interactions with an existing skill, what might need to get updated.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and then when you update the skills, like I typically have a chat where I'm working on the skill because then that gives me an easy way to just say update the skill. How do you go about updating the skill?
Yeah, usually what I've done is, at the completion of a chat or when I'm kind of running up against context, I'll just say, hey, can you summarize this? And then I'll just take it into a fresh chat and I'll say, take all of this. Or sometimes I take it from multiple chats
Mhm.
and then I'll have it repackage everything, and then I'll re-upload it. Is that
Okay.
what you're asking, or is your process?
Well,
Can you describe it?
well, there's a thing where if I have a chat where I've used the conversation to build the skill, there can be an update button in the upper right.
Uh-huh.
So just keep using that chat when I modify the skill.
I see. So if you're off doing something, you might come back to that original
Yeah.
chat
Right.
and
And I'm
build.
like, here's the ideas I have for updating this skill. And then I
Gotcha.
click the update button.
I don't know where those chats are. They're like a long time ago.
Right. Okay. Um, all right. Let's see. Sergio, you said I do similar, Sergio, similar what? Like have an auditor or how you do updates or
Yeah, with updates, what I'm usually doing is using Cowork and its capability of folders,
yep.
and I call them workstations, so everyone has like
Mhm.
a its own Claude. But then I also have like if I feel like I'm doing something repetitive, or and then I'm asking it like, hey, what is repetitive here that
Hmm.
could be turned into a skill, or how can I make this more efficient, or how can I make this skill more efficient? And it's
Mhm.
like, oh, when you did this, maybe we could add this into the skill and update this section kind of thing. So
Right. Okay, cool. Olivia just posted a thing. It's like, hey, live hands-on training. She's going to talk about, we got some classes coming up. Mm. Olivia, if you want to talk about it, you're sharing the screen. I'll talk.
Hi, just had
Okay.
to find my unmute button. It's buried under all my windows. Yeah, so what I just uploaded was just some information about our essentials and in-depth trainings that we have coming up. Our essentials course is going to be September 10th and 11th, and in-depth is September 24th and 25th. So essentials is for those who are just getting started with AI, and I think for a lot of you, probably the in-depth would be the right choice if you guys haven't already explored that. And you can just see a little bit about the differences and what you can walk away with. So if anybody has any questions, I will also put my email in the chat and anybody can just feel free to email me.
And one thing to add is our next meetup will be on Wednesday, September 23rd at 10 a.m.
Yes, we actually were thinking about doing a quiz, but we're at, or a poll, but you know what? Maybe I'll send an email out to people and ask them for their input. Um,
Because we're at time.
we're at time. That's right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the questions. Yeah, I hope that was useful. I think skills feel technical, but I hope you saw it's actually pretty easy to create a skill and make it this cool reusable thing. So I encourage you to give it a try.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much. Always great to see you. Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.